A su salud, on BCTV es auspiciado por UPMC for You. Muy buenas noches y bienvenido al programa A su salud. Welcome to our program, To Your Health. And tonight we're going to have a very interesting show, somewhat different from what we're used to in the past, since we're not necessarily going to be talking about health, but we are going to be talking about some of the issues that are really important and relevant to what's happening at the national level, especially with the primary season right now. And of course, that movement is now moving to Pennsylvania as we're approaching the primaries on April the 26th. So we're going to be talking about the Turkish Cultural Center, which has done some wonderful work in Central PA, places like Lancaster, Harrisburg, and of course there's a community here in Berks County as well. I want to let you know that if you have a question, you're more than welcome to call us live at the studios of BCTV at 610-378-0426. Again, that number is 610-378-0426. And with us tonight, we have Sait Onal, who is the president of the organization. And I also, Sait, if you want to introduce Mustafa as well, you're welcome to do that. But welcome to the studios of BCTV, and we're happy to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's our pleasure to be here. Here is with me Mustafa Elaldı. He's our project coordinator in Harrisburg and Lancaster, Turkish Cultural Center of Pennsylvania. And thank you for having us.
Perfect, perfect. And so let's start with the obvious question, and that would be, what is the Turkish Cultural Center?
Thank you. Again, on behalf of Turkish Cultural Center and all our volunteers, we appreciate being here and having the opportunity. This is Turkish Cultural Center of Pennsylvania is a non-profit organization. It is established to help Turkish Americans and to understand their own culture and have a relationship with other communities, develop intercultural and interfaith relations to help to have a better place to live in central Pennsylvania, make the area a better place to live, work, and play. So that is Turkish Cultural Center.
So obviously, like any other immigrant group, there's some issues that are impacting immigrants from Turkey. Things like getting acclimated to the culture in the United States, getting acclimated to the language, getting acclimated to the work situation, getting acclimated to the community in general. And I would imagine that's where Mustafa comes in, where he actually provides kind of like a one-to-one case management interaction with people and being able to help them kind of like get acclimated to the area.
Yeah. Definitely, because there is many people immigrate when in the first years they have several issues, family issues, maybe education problems, language issues. We want to make sure that we can provide all the services to these families so they come to Turkish Cultural Center, not only live and continue to enjoy their cultural richness, but also try to get a better adjustment to their new life in the United States. So that helps many of our members, community members, to seek help from us so they can work and play better.
And approximately, like, about how many people are impacted that you see on a yearly basis that actually go through this process of help?
Turkish Cultural Center is not only serving the people from Turkey. We are actually open to Turkic countries that has a similar cultural background and language that we speak. So in a year throughout the Turkish Cultural Centers all around Pennsylvania, we can say 10,000 people or more benefit from our services.
That's a big group. And before we dig into that, because I know there's a lot, obviously, when we're talking about not only the Turkish community in central Pennsylvania, but also the Turkish community in Turkey that you guys are working with, so it gets somewhat complex. But before we go in there, talk to me about the beginning, the genesis of the actual center. What was the trigger? What was it that motivated the Turkish community to come up with this concept?
Turkish Cultural Center, we are proud to call us as part of a movement that started in Turkey in 60s. It's called Hizmet Movement. Hizmet Movement, the founder of Hizmet Movement, Mr. Fethullah Gülen, actually he lives in Pennsylvania, in Sayresburg, Pennsylvania area, who has started this movement as a volunteerism and serving others. So Turkish Cultural Center takes the principles, main principles from that movement and helps the community, not only Turkish American community, but the community around us, to encourage people to get into volunteerism activity and serve others. There are three pillars of this Hizmet movement. Comes, education, and we invest in education, and we invest in interfaith, intercultural dialogue activities, and we invest helping people to open dialogues. So these three pillars helped us to make a lot of our activities shape the organization. How can we reach out to people, help the education process, and help interfaith, intercultural dialogue activities, and open people to start talking to each other.
And let's talk a little bit more about this interfaith, intercultural dialogue, because obviously I don't think we have to, you would almost have to be living in a cave not to be aware that I think because of the election process, the primary election process, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of discussions about immigrants. Some of the conversation and some of the dialogue has been pretty bitter and pretty acidic, and to some extent very offensive to some ethnic communities out there. So I would imagine that now more than ever, the kind of work that you're doing, especially talking about interfaith or intercultural dialogue, becomes very important. What are some of the examples of some of that work that you have done in Central Pennsylvania?
Well, over the years, not only recently, we have been invited by many different groups, organizations, church and synagogues and religious or cultural organizations, because they're curious about Islam or they're curious about Turkey. Because Turkey is cradle of civilizations. There's, everyone can find something about themselves from Turkey, because from Roman to the Byzantine to Ottomans, there are many cultures and empires went through Turkey. So that makes Turkey with a big, rich history and then culture. So that makes people always curious about Turkey and what we do. So we have been going out and doing presentations to get people to understand who we are and what we do. And of course, we have a lot of curious people come in and ask us funny questions about Turkey, because unfortunately today there's not much people travel, and so as they do, they find out that what they have in mind about another country is a lot different than what the reality is. So this helps a lot. So what we do in our cultural centers throughout Pennsylvania, we have 7 different cultural centers, and the closest one in this area is Harrisburg and Lancaster. So people come there. We have a monthly Turkish coffee nights. People come in the coffee nights, and we share Turkish hospitality and a good Turkish coffee, and also some other Turkish food, which is a very big part of culture. We demonstrate art. We demonstrate the music, the folk dance, and many other aspects of the Turkish culture, so people can first gather around the table and then start sharing ideas. Because we believe strongly, if people can get together from, regardless of their history, background, religion, or color, then we can solve a lot of problems. Because Hizmet movement, that Turkish Cultural Center is also part of, takes the power of when we have a shared values with people, and we can stay on the shared values to solve the problems that we face in the world, including the refugee immigration problem, including many economic crises or the wars and everything else. Because once we have to do is gather people around the round table, share a cup of coffee or break bread together. That is our richness, and when we are able to do that, it's amazing how we can solve many problems when we get people to talk.
And I like the point that you're making, is that when you think about Turkey, some of the biggest religions really have intersected at that point. When we talk about Christianity, when we talk about the Muslim faith and so on and so forth, I mean, historically you have been there already, in a setting where you guys have to get along together. There's a high level of diversity when it comes to religion and when it comes to ethnic groups. So, you can basically say that you've been there, you've done it, and it's one of those things where I think it is important to then to begin to open the dialogue here in the United States, to begin to dispel some of the, stereotypes that we see on TV, to challenge some of the language that we see on TV, and to really, like you said, educate people and so they understand there's a big difference between reality and the perception that sometimes that we get through, watching TV. But I know that you brought in some pictures as well. If we can get the computer on the screen, that would be great. And Sait, I don't know if you wanted to, show some of the slides that you have now, and
I would love to. I would love to. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Before we get to that, I would like to say a couple words about, I am from a town called Antioch in Turkey. Antioch is a biblical town.
Yes.
Like you said, we have people, the first church in the world has been established in Antioch by St. Paul. So, when we grow up, our friends were Jewish children and Christian kids and Muslim. We lived together, played soccer in the streets together. So today we are trying to reintroduce this idea that the interfaith, intercultural dialogue, people can get along. But we lived that, my childhood, that we lived that as a real example of how people can get along. So people still live in peace in many of the parts of the world, that different cultures and religions actually they enjoy being a neighbor to each other. Right,
and that's a good example. So, if that already happened in Turkey, certainly could happen in other places.
Anywhere. Exactly. Definitely. I agree.
So, now, what are we seeing here in some of these pictures?
The Hizmet movement, as I mentioned, it's a transnational social movement. It started in Turkey, but now it's all around the world. There are 170 countries. These three principles that I was talking earlier is to help people to understand each other and other people's culture. They have opened schools, dialogue institutions, hospitals. These people from all different backgrounds. They are not necessarily only Muslim or Turkish. People gathered around the Hizmet movement. Mainly started in Turkey, and then Turkish people started gathering around Mr. Glenn's teachings in 1960s. Now it is all over the world that is creating an energy to help people to understand each other so they can get along through education, interfaith and intercultural dialogue, and being open to each other. So this is some of these pictures that you're seeing here. There are some very diverse background people from Turkey have participated in Hizmet movement. They're Muslim, they're the Jewish and Christian activists that they participated in this movement. That shows what these people have in common. It is about serving the community.
Right.
It is a civil society movement, as I said, that started out as a community of observant Muslims in Turkey, but then around the ideas of Mr. Glenn is a Muslim preacher and a scholar and a social advocate. People gathered all around, and then now there's a lot of institutes to help the world peace to be a reality. The Hizmet movement does one thing very well: combines personal spirituality and social responsibility. Because what they believe, the religious values, should be helping us to solve problems rather than creating problems with other communities.
So basically, the faith is basically pushing the believer or the individual to say, if you want to practice your faith, one of those values is you have to help others.
Community service. And dedicating yourself in helping others. That is the main principle of any religion, actually teaches that. So we use that shared values so we can reach out to other communities and help out. So it's a value-based, open to everyone, and focused on peaceful, positive action. There are many different fields that the Hizmet movement shows activity in: education, publication and media, healthcare, dialogue, disaster relief, and economic assistance, and of course professional associations. As I said, the three principles actually come from helping the education. Is a big part of it. So there's schools and educational institutes all over the world, and then helping people in the time of disaster. Those relief organizations help, and then of course dialogue activities can help people start talking around the round table.
And I was going to say that education, I think, is very important because there has been a lot of talk and conversations around certain groups in the Middle East that become radicalized. But of course, when you have individuals that have no access to education, individuals that have no access to jobs and economic development, then they get to a point where basically there's nothing for them, and therefore there's nothing for them to lose. And that's when we get into the situations where we have, terrorism to a certain extent. So I think the kind of work that you're doing, obviously, is providing a vehicle by which people can have a path to success and therefore be able to support their families, I would imagine.
Jonathan, very good point. Really, in Turkey, for example, when it first started, even in recent years, this education in the eastern part of Turkey helped a lot of Kurdish children to have a future, so they can get a college education and they can get good jobs, so they don't have to join some terrorist organization or be radicalized in that way. Because when people have no hope, it's much easier to recruit them to do things
Absolutely.
that is crazy.
Absolutely.
So Hizmet movement goes around all over the world and help people to get educated, because that stops. First of all, helps them to understand that they have an option, but then also helps them give an opportunity so they can do better things for themselves and their community.
Which, by the way, that doesn't happen just only in Turkey. I mean, it happens in a lot of the inner cities in the United States, where young kids have no access to education or opportunities, and what do? They join gangs. They do something that they're not supposed to, or they become part of the criminal system. But I think the fact that you're providing that path to success is something I think is really worthwhile. And again, I think this is what you talked about also, having that equal opportunity through education, that is very important as well.
Definitely. I mean, girls' education also is very, very important for our movement.
Yes.
In all over the world, the Hizmet movement volunteers advocate, Mr. Gulen, starting with him, advocate that girls should get a good education as much as the boys. So equal opportunity has to be
for both gender.
And
I believe that we have a home viewer. Home viewer, go ahead with your question.
Yes, hi, good evening. I'm interested in knowing about the food in Turkey.
Well, I mean, we talked about a lot of things. We haven't talked about what are the good stuff to eat.
Turkish food, as you can see me, probably I'm a good advocate to talk about Turkish food.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great food. Turkish food is actually, it consists of a lot of different cultures. Because Turkey is a cradle of civilization, Turkish food also comes from influence of Arabic food, Middle Eastern food, African food, and also the Greek and other parts of the Bosnian and Balkans have a lot of influence. So Turkish food is like a melting pot of the whole region. As a result, there are a lot of great items. If you ever come to one of our centers, we have events and we usually have samples of this great Turkish food. So please look us up online and then come to our event. We would love to share some of that with you.
And in fact, I know that I heard this story about baklava, that obviously when we hear baklava, automatically we're thinking about the Greeks, but we're not thinking about the Turks. So, I mean, what's the connection?
Yeah, that's a sore subject now. Our Greek friends and Turks, we usually cannot decide who has it. Again, it's of course in Turkey there's a huge baklava and the dessert culture, and then Greeks also do a baklava, and then we also respect. They have a good kitchen too.
Right.
But yeah, Turkish baklava is different.
Okay, great. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but let's see if we can go through the slides real quickly. Of course, you talked about free tutoring services, looking at the Kurdish children, which is a population that I know has been on the news recently, especially given what's happening, in that part of the world right now. But perhaps maybe you can elaborate more.
Definitely. I mean, this was actually a great project that's still working out. The kids in the eastern part of Turkey mainly, they're Kurdish descent people there.
Right.
They're great citizens of Turkey, and these people, what they need is equal opportunity. The schools are not same as Istanbul or Ankara.
Right.
Those kids who doesn't have good education opportunities, they're looking out for an option. So Hizmet movement have done free tutoring service to a lot of children in that area to help them to make education possible for them, and as a result, that helped a lot of integration to be better, and those people remain with the mainstream of Turkey.
And I want to say that's a population I think that have seen a lot of war, and I'm talking about probably going back to the maybe the early 80s or so. So I'm sure there's been a lot of displacement in Afghanistan that obviously has pushed a lot of refugees into Turkey and vice versa. So I mean, I think that's very commendable that you guys are working on that. So again, that's still free of charge. There's no charge for the tutoring services. And then you also, of course, mentioned the fact that you're working with girls as well.
Definitely. Girls' education is important for us. We want to make sure these after-school programs are helping the children. The college prep programs are helping the children. Here in the United States and all over the world, we want to make sure that everyone in the community gets a good education, and that helps them to become better citizens.
And I gather these are some of the internal communications that you have in Central PA, or this is at the national level?
This is Hizmet Movements, actually, newspaper and different media organization. There's a television in Turkey, and that actually widely seen by Turkish viewers and seeked out. There are many organizations that within the Hizmet movement that helps the mission of the Hizmet. Again, to educate people, open dialogue with the communities, and help people to start talking to each other.
And of course, I mean, part of a community always involves hospital and the health services that you provide as well, right?
Definitely, all over the world actually. In Africa, Hizmet movement has started many operations, hospitals free of charge for the community to do operations to people who are in need of health care. So these are great way of helping people to improve their quality of lives all over the world.
And I would imagine that also includes disaster relief. I mean, many times there's been situations where we have earthquakes and floods and things of that sort.
So, in this, I just received an email about the Ecuador earthquake. The Kimse Yok Mu is a non-profit organization in Turkey. In here, United States, is called Embrace Relief. These two organizations all over the world, Embrace Relief is already in Ecuador and collecting donations to help people in local. So they're all over the world to help out when there is a need, a disaster or economic assistance is needed by the local people. So the Hizmet movement wants to be there for people who needs our help.
Okay. Well, it seems like I know that we have a lot more that we probably are not going to be able to show tonight. So I really, basically I'm reaching out to you, the viewers, that if you need more information, please get in touch with the Turkish Cultural Center. They have a lot to offer. Amit, I don't know, I want to give you some last words since we're running out of time, but I don't know if you have any other words of wisdom that you want to share with our viewers.
Well, we have monthly Turkish coffee nights in our centers in Lancaster and Harrisburg. We have a Turkic Day actually coming up at the Capitol in Harrisburg, May 25th.
Great.
They can come to any of our events and they will get to meet some great people in their neighborhood. And we want to start that friendship and then we can build something together. We want to make Central Pennsylvania a home for our Turkish Americans, but at the same time we want to help out anyone in the community that needs our help.
Well, with that, I want to thank you both, Amit and Mustafa, for joining our show tonight. And again, to you, the viewers, please keep the dialogue open. Amit already kind of set the stage for this type of conversation, both at the interfaith level as well as the intercultural level. So with that, I say good night and hope to see you next month. A su salud, Ombese TV es auspiciado por UPMC for You.